really impact and change for the next generation. We are the young dreamers of today and leaders of tomorrow. And with so much that is going on right now in our world, we are seeing all over the world, people stand up right now in the climate of injustice, in the climate of racial inequality, in the climate of our Black and brown men being killed at the hands of police, our communities and our people being marginalized, terrorized, and traumatized by the system that is supposed to be set in place to protect us. And so we have seen this many times before. We have been engaged, involved, and activated on the ground, being a part of National Action Network, one of the leading civil rights organizations in the nation, founded in 1991 by Reverend Al Sharpton, and committed to really pushing the needle to be the voices for the voiceless and to be present, activated, engaged, and really helping to lead the movement of social justice and social activism forward. And so we gather again tonight in the midst of this climate where we are seeing yet again another Black man who was killed at the hands of injustice, inequality, and racism. And so we gather again tonight to discuss not only where we are today, but also how we continue the fight for justice and equality in the most meaningful and impactful way that we can. And so we are joined tonight by various leaders who have been on the front lines for change, some for decades, some who are younger and fairly new, but who have nevertheless been steadfast in the fight and who have been one of the leading voices that we've seen on the front lines. And so we gather here tonight on our virtual experience for Huddle to discuss tangible, active ways. A lot of young people have been tweeting and asking and calling and really raising their voice. A lot of people are angry, we're frustrated, and we are raising our voices in the midst of this rage and anger that we feel, in the midst of this emotion, as to what can I do to be actively involved in this fight for justice and equality, where enough is enough, and we are tired of seeing our Black people being traumatized and killed. And so we are gathered here tonight to discuss that. Where do we go from here? And how do we keep engaging in the movement for change? I want to bring on, to kick off this meaningful discussion, two of the most incredible voices this young generation, this next generation has. Sister Mary Pat Hector, who is our National Youth Director for National Action Network, and Miss Dominique Johnson, who is one of the leading voices. She actually works Youth Huddle here in her own right and still a part of Youth Huddle. And I want them to now speak on this feeling of rage, this feeling of injustice, with so much going on now. What is your update from the ground in terms of young people, and how can we stay activated in this push for justice and equality? Mary Pat Hector, are you with us?
She's not on yet.
All right, Dominique.
Good evening.
Dominique Johnson. Good evening, Dominique. How are you tonight?
I'm good, and yourself?
All right. So give us an update. How are you feeling, Dominique? Let's talk to the youth. How are you feeling? What is going on?
It's so many feelings. I feel proud. One thing, for people standing up that I thought were never people actually having us talk. And it's always a battle like me and around my age, just being woke and having that conversation without them getting annoyed, but saying this is wrong and this is what we need to do, and have effective conversation. So to see this is going on through social media, and teenagers and young adults are taking it to the grounds and actually, I'm definitely proud, and my spirits are lifted up from this sad situation. But I am also enraged when it comes to, it's one too many Black people, kids, all the way up until adults like George, that have lost their lives in the arms of people who are supposed to protect us, which are the police. But not even that, people that are our Caucasian counterparts. And yesterday, it was very hurtful to have a conversation with my mom and with my little brother, which is 9, about being a Black man in a white society. So it definitely brought tears to my eyes that I even have to have this conversation. And my little brother, while watching the news, was just in chills, and he was just like, I'm scared. And he had to take breaks of going to the bathroom and I guess fixing his face and not crying, just from seeing everybody in rage and everybody in anger. Now, I wouldn't say the violent part, them loitering and doing all of that, I definitely don't agree with, but I understand where they're coming from when it comes to wanting to set stuff on fire. But then again, I am with National Action Network on the nonviolent part. And there's a lot of safety precautions also. It's a pandemic going on, so people that aren't wearing masks and too close to each other, it's a conflicting feeling also.
I know that we as young people are angry. We're outraged, and for some of us, we're just seeing. It seems like we're seeing more and more violence amongst us, happening to us. All too often.
Yeah.
Now we're turning on the TV and we're literally seeing communities being terrorized. Young people are looting. They're rioting. People are angry. They're fed up, and they are feeling that violence begets violence. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about seeing young people, turning on TVs and seeing violence happening now in our communities, and people starting to react to situations that we're seeing out of anger and frustration with violence?
I definitely don't agree with it. I'm not for setting fires on different buildings and cop cars. I understand where the rage is coming from, but you have to channel it and be more productive. Setting a cop car on fire is not doing anything but setting a cop car on fire, and actually you play a part into, this is why Black men are like this. This is why you play a part in that statistic. And it's definitely conversations where I have had with my parents where it's just like, you have to be better than your white counterparts just because to prove something that you're equal. So when you show violence, when you do violence, you're just playing a part in it, and it's just so unacceptable. I don't even know how to explain it. I don't agree with it at all. Violence is not my thing. Loitering, breaking things, I don't agree with it at all, because you're not getting anywhere. You're not solving anything but breaking or setting that thing on fire and starting more violence. Which, if we're supposed to say that it's no violence, why we keep creating more violence?
Now, Dominique, you've been involved in National Action Network Huddle since its beginning, since it started. Yes. Can you talk to how, and you've been a part of organizing some of the largest demonstrations organized by young people in the history of organizing marches and demonstrations and protests. Do you feel like we have lost that momentum to peacefully protest? And can you speak a little bit to your experience as a youth organizer, having not only been in hand in some organizing some of the largest demonstrations successfully led by young people, but also in your plight to move forward as an activist and a leader, in this fight for justice and equality? Have we lost that momentum, and can you speak to that?
I don't think we've lost the momentum. I think we, if anything, gathered a little more or a couple of more feet to travel with us when it comes to marching, because there's so many more people added to it. I guess when it comes to wanting to be an activist or just not wanting to be complacent, they just feel like they just need to get up and do something. They wasn't fortunate enough, or maybe there wasn't a National Action Network Youth Huddle there to train them on becoming an activist, doing the right thing, and what actually helps, and to motivate people to speak to other people to actually have justice when it comes to those families or people that look like you. When it comes to that. But when it comes to organizing marches, you're definitely gonna have your down parts where you cry. Like, I remember the march that Huddle did, the first march, it was over 300 people, and that same day somebody died. But you can't take that, all of that success that you did of those 300 people of fighting for people's rights to just, at the end of the day, oh, well, this didn't work, so now we have to set a cop car on fire. No, what you do is you go from step one, and you got to do all of that stuff all over and all over. We didn't get here just by violence. Martin Luther King wasn't violent. We didn't get here through violence, so why start with violence? I think, but it's time for us, those people who haven't been nonviolent and are activists and are on the grounds and have been in this for a while, it's time to take those people under our wings and show them, you know what, this is actually how it's supposed to be done. We understand your frustration. We understand where you're coming from, but this isn't the way. I guess we just need to have that conversation and not just be on separate sides on violent or nonviolent approaches.
Amen, Dominique. Amen. You speaking right for a young lady. I love
Dominique Johnson. And for all of you who do have questions or comments, please put them in the chat, and we will be happy to address your comments as we move further through the discussion. Thank you, Dominique. If we're joined by Mary Pat Hector, we can hear from Mary Pat now. Mary Pat Hector, our National Youth Director for National Action Network. I guess we're still having issues getting Mary Pat on. In the climate of action and taking action, I want to bring on now someone who is seasoned leader in this aspect to give us some perspective on where we've come from, where do we have to go, and what the climate is now for people of color to be engaged. He joins us every week. He is a leader of National Action Network, and he is our New York City liaison to the president for National Action Network. But he was also recently in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at the site where George Floyd's life was taken away at the hands of police. And he joined Reverend Sharpton, our president, at the site with Gwen Carr, the mother of Eric Garner, whom was killed in Staten Island at the hands of police 6 years ago. And so Minister Stephen Marshall is on with us now. Can you give us an update as you were live on the ground in Minneapolis? And can you talk to the current climate of, anger and engagement across the United States or across the country that we're seeing now, and how we can mobilize and organize to continue?
First, thank you again for, Dominique, your leadership, the leadership of Youth Huddle. I think this is probably the most dynamic youth platform that I've ever experienced, and you guys continue to carry conversations that need to be had. I want to just go right into it. Minneapolis, Minnesota, we were there last week, as you stated. What was troubling for me was to see the fact that we had grown men, and this is no way to marginalized sex or gender, but we had grown men crying on the street. And so while the news and many who report news via social media may talk about looting, fighting, and violence, there were grown men crying on the street simply because the element of hopelessness has taken residency again in a Black community where a Black man was killed senselessly. There was no reason, no justification for someone to be just simply, devalued and killed without any recourse on the street. And so the climate that I saw or that I witnessed was just people really, really hurting. And so obviously it's newsworthy to talk about fires being set and all that stuff, but the fact that people are hurting needs to be the focal point of our conversation. And I don't want to go off track from what you asked me to explain, but I believe once you go from peaceful protest to looting, you are no longer a protester. And so people need to understand the fact that you begin to loot. You may be expressing yourself in a way that you see that's appropriate, but in my opinion, you're not a protester anymore when you choose to do that. And so again, I think people are just really, really hurt. Some of us channel our anger and our hurt differently, and express it differently. But for sure, people are hurt on the ground. You really have people walking around not knowing what to do, and so that was the most probably concerning thing for me. Obviously, there needs to be the conversation of mental health resources for those folks and people around the country. We've seen a national outcry against police brutality and how this was handled. But again, on the ground in Minnesota, people are just really, really hurt. I saw broken families, broken men and children watching their fathers and the father figures of their communities really broken in the street. Literally, when I say broken, I'm talking about you can walk down the street and people are sitting on the sidewalk, not because they're homeless, not because they're hurt or in distress physically, but they're emotionally broken. And that was a really telling moment for me. Hello?
Sorry, I was muted. Can everyone hear? Sorry, I was asking if you feel there is a disconnect with people who are now feeling like they have just woke up and now they want to get engaged with organizations and with organizations who do the work, with legacy organizations, with other organizations that that represent Black people, people of color, and fighting for injustice for people of color worldwide. Now people are just getting involved. We have people like white allies that are coming on saying, I want to be a part of the movement for change. We have young people that are now getting involved. What message do we give to them who want to get involved and who want to engage in the movement for change?
I think it's phenomenal that people want to get engaged. I don't think there is a late comer or a late bloomer in the movement. I do also think we need to make sure we understand and really implement what our movement is about. There are many movements inside of other movements, as you see around the country. There are thousands of people that are peacefully protesting, such as the National Action Network. And we are talking about policy changes as it pertains to police chokeholds, accountability, etc. I just think people have to be oriented properly. Those who fall in the line with our traditions, in which we believe in nonviolent protests by way of direct action, we should welcome them. We should encourage them. We should tell them that we are appreciative of them. We've been waiting for them. Obviously, this generation I believe it's their time to step up and make sure that they carry the mantle. But again, you have to identify with what movement that you want or people are saying they want to join. We've seen this time and time again in National Action Network where, let's use Eric Garner for an example, that, right now it's exciting. As Reverend Sharpton will tell us, that this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It will take a long time for this process of justice to be delivered to us by way of the judicial system. And so the time will tell those who are serious about joining a movement for change rather than those who are riding a wave because it looks good to raise your fist and say no justice, no peace, post on your social media platforms and look like you're the part. But it's those that endure to the end, and those of us that have been doing this. I joined the movement when I was 13 years old, not because it was fashionable. There was no social media. There was nothing to talk about or brag about being in the street when your friends were playing football, but you were at a rally on Saturday morning, listening to the elders really give out the marching orders. And I think those who are serious will not be rogue. They will not jump out there to start a new movement, but they will join something that's already been proven, already been tested, already been tried, and already been successful in getting victory for victims. I think it's really unfortunate when we see those who pop out of nowhere. And again, I'm not denigrating their effort or their desire to be a part, but you cannot jump out. And Reverend Sharpton has taught us, jumping before the victims doesn't mean anything. You're doing it for a different purpose. It's insulting. You should be called out for it because we don't have time for sideshows when we're trying to get justice. The enemy is not looking for who has the best line, and they play on that as well. But they're looking for who's serious by way of who's focused, who's driven, who has a strategy. Burning down edifices and buildings. Again, I'm not speaking against that. We do not believe in that, but nobody's going to talk to you about a legislation after you burnt down the precinct, right? You can't get a conversation with a legislator after you said you wanted to go loot 15 stores in Soho, New York. So again, the strategy of what we do and why we've been effective is because demonstration always leads to legislation. If we don't do that, if we do not orientate folks that this is the process, these are the tools in which we use to get to the end goal, I think we have a hamster-like movement where people are just running around doing whatever for the moment. And again, like I said, and I can put time on it, I will give it 3 to 4 weeks, God willing that nothing else happens, that you will see crowds diminish, and those who say that they were for the people will vanish in the middle of the night, simply because there's nothing to sustain why they were doing it in the first place.
Minister Stephen Marshall, if you can stick with us just a few more moments. I do want to bring on a special guest of ours who has joined us tonight. He's no stranger to NAN's Youth Huddle, but he is definitely someone that we have seen, we've worked with on the front lines, fighting for justice, and now he is a state senator, Senator Brian Benjamin, a senator for District 30 of Harlem, which encompasses Harlem, East Harlem, and the Upper West Side. But he is, as we say, a movement baby, and he's on tonight. Senator Brian Benjamin, can you talk to us tonight? Working with legislation, we're talking about systemic change, and we're talking about how we as young people can engage, activate, and be involved. But you have worked not only on the front lines for justice, but also on the other side, working in government and working with our legislators to really push for laws to be changed, that we can see tangible results in our community and for our people. Can you talk tonight to us? What do we do now? What do we look forward to? How do we stay engaged? And from your perspective, working in your in your angle, in your lane.
Well, first of all, good evening. I want to thank you, Dominique, and Ashley, and the entire team. First of all, I just want to thank you for keeping this huddle going from the beginning. A lot of people talk about doing things and they might do it for a few weeks, but you've been doing this for years, and I'm just so impressed. I remember I was at the first one, so I kind of feel like I'm kind of cool because I was at the first one. Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Before I answer your question, I just want to echo some of the really good points that Stephen just mentioned, because, one of the things I think is important is that groups like NAN that have been tried and true, who have done the work, who know how to move social justice forward, has to be on the front lines of the conversation in a time like this. And I think what happens is there are other individuals who might want to see this as an opportunity to bring their agenda to our cause. And I think it's important as a legislator, and I tell this to my folks all the time, as we're talking to and listening to people in terms of some of the laws and the things we need to be focused on, let's make sure we're listening to the voices that are the tried and true voices who we know care about our community and focus on our issues. I see this in a few ways. I mean, honestly, I have so much going on in my head because I've never been in a time where there's so many problems at the same time. I mean, the Central Park issue with Amy Cooper, in and of itself, would be a 1-month issue, okay? Just dealing with her and dealing with what she did to Christian Cooper and talking about some of the mechanics around the weaponizing of white womanhood at the expense of Black men. That in and of itself is its own thing. We now have to deal with that, George Floyd, COVID-19. I mean, everyone, I hope we didn't forget about the fact that we're supposed to be social distancing and protecting ourselves from dying, but we're supposed to be dealing with all that at the same time. All of that trauma, different kinds of trauma. Black people have particularly been ravaged by COVID-19. Our public housing developments ravaged by COVID-19. Just dealing with NYCHA and the city on making sure that they keep NYCHA clean, keep our public housing clean, because if you don't keep the public housing clean, you have a lot of people in a small space. You have 6, 7, 8 folks living in a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. If someone's asymptomatic, you can't say go back home and self-quarantine. How are they going to quarantine? There's no space. So we have had to have by the way, my office, we're like, it's so much we're trying to solve at the same time, food insecurity, etc. But this is the George Floyd conversation. So I want to focus on that, but just know that there's so many other issues that we can't lose track of as we deal with this. We can't be issue hoppers. We got to be issue resolvers. And so I'm trying to keep track of multiple issues, but let's talk about George Floyd. It is important that we, as people of color, as Black people, are on top of the details. I remember when Eric Garner got killed, and I said, we got the videotape. It's a wrap. These guys, Pantalleo's done. He's getting arrested. He's going to jail. So is people who are around. They losing their jobs. But guess what happened? And we got a progressive mayor, right? All of that stuff. We didn't have Giuliani sitting in there causing the problem, right? It was de Blasio. So, and I didn't stay on top of the mechanics, right? And we didn't know what's in a police union contract. A lot of us still don't know what's in a police union contract. We didn't know all the pieces that protect police brutality that our, mayor, frankly, signed off on when he gave them their contract. So I think now is the time. It's a time for protests, peaceful protests. Mm-hmm. It's a time for hurt, everything else, but it's also a time for facts. It's a time for lawyers. It's a time for understanding so that we can know, okay, you know what? This is the specific items we need to address in order to protect our people long-term and not get back in this situation. So a couple of things. Number one, I'm very happy to know that the lawyers for Greg Floyd were not playing any games. That examiner came out with that BS analysis. The family went and hired its own examiner, right. And now we find out from this independent examiner. What do we find out? We find out, oh wait, he did die from asphyxiation, right? If we weren't keeping our eyes on the ball, we got a tape. Why do we need to make sure that the right DA is prosecuting? We got the examiner facts right. We understand the difference between first, second, and third degree murder, right? I mean, like now, I remember when Obama was running for president. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place, Dominique, but my head is racing. When Obama was running for president, many of us, at least I know I was, took the time to figure out all of the mechanics. What's a caucus? How does it work? What's this? What's that? Wanted him to win. Wanted that first black president. If we want justice for George Floyd, we have got to be on top of the details and the facts, and we've got to be fighting to make sure that everything is done right up to the books so that we can be in a place where we can get some justice. Fortunately, Minnesota has a civil law, which we actually have in New York as well, that basically says if a cop is watching another cop commit a harmful offense, they become liable too. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't have the grounding to go get the other ones, right? So we still fighting for that, but we're fighting for that because there are laws that enable that. What are some of the things we need to do in New York State? Because it's not all about what everyone else is supposed to be doing. Let's talk about what we're supposed to be doing. Couple things. Number one, right now, if you are a police officer and you have misconduct on your file, the public can't see. It's not transparent. We need to make that transparent. We need, if you've been cited for a number of offenses in our community, I need to be able to go on a website and look that up and be able to hold the NYPD accountable for not holding you accountable. That's number one. Number two, cops can't, and we had a bill called Repeal 50A. We're working on it. We just had a 5-hour conference call. We are working on it. Number two, the cops cannot be investigating the cops. I mean, that's so fundamental. I don't even know why we have to even discuss this. You can't have people who are in the same mix working together being the people who are investigating bad behavior by their partners. We have to have an external third party, whether it's an independent prosecutor, some kind of separate from the police structure entity that can do that. Third, we do have a special prosecutor in New York State, but it is through the executive order of the governor. It is not statute. So we could turn around and have a different governor. Governor says, forget that. We cannot have a situation where district attorneys who need and work week in and week out on various issues with police on the ground, then being the people who are going to somehow be independent in a highly charged situation. Too close. We need to have special prosecutors, particularly for cases like this. As you know, in Minnesota, they took the case from the Hennepin County prosecutor and have turned it over to the Attorney General, which is a good thing. We also need to ban racial and ethnic profiling within the NYPD. I mean, I know this sounds so fundamental, but it's not actually banned in the state of New York. I have a bill that actually would say, me and Assembly Member Anis Bashar, you got to ban. This is banned. So which means is if you do it, now there are specific consequences tied to you profiling. We need to put that on the books. We also need we got to look at these police contracts. These police union contracts. It's enough's enough, and that the community needs to be on top of this issue. I know I'm all over this thing. We've got to be on top of this issue, because if we had a George Floyd case right here, if we had George Floyd in New York, obviously we got Eric Garner, but if we had that specific case in New York, we'd be dealing with all of the mess. I just saw someone put in the comments the police budget. I agree that we absolutely have to review the police budget. That's obviously being done on the city level. I'm not a city elected, but I believe that we have to do that. I think that we need to do it in a way that is very thoughtful, that is very clear on how much police do we need, where, why, and how. But that's I think that's got to be part of a community-based conversation about how we want to govern ourselves as humans. So that's, I don't want to go on and on, Dominique, because I could answer any questions, but I want to focus on what you want me to talk about. But, I'm just so sad. But one thing I also want to say is on the NYPD, the mayor of the city of New York needs to basically follow one principle here. The cops should be protecting peaceful protests. That should be their aim. That should be their job. That should be their focus. That should be the main point. When they go out, their job is to make sure that the people who have come to peacefully protest can do so for however long they want and can get home safely. That's their job. If they made that their job and not the job of being adversarial because their agenda is to enforce order as they see it, now it's hard to separate out who are the people who are coming to have confusion and et cetera, et cetera. If you focused on let's protect the peaceful protest, let's protect the peace, then you're not going to be pepper spraying assembly members and senators because they went out there to help you protect the peace. They thought that's what your job was, to protect the peace. So that's what they went out there to help you do. Meanwhile, you got another agenda. How is that possible? How do we have, and again, I'm not here to scream on de Blasio per se. What I'm talking about is the system. We elected a progressive mayor. That's what we said. Remember, this is the stop and frisk mayor. This is not Giuliani, folks. We elected a progressive mayor. He had a progressive agenda. He was going to make sure tailor to cities. We get all, right? Everyone remembers all that.
Right.
We go from that, Dominique. I see Ashley. How we go from that to police cars running over protesters? How does that work? Peaceful protesters. How do we get from there to here? And then how do we get him saying, well, the police are doing the best? How do we get there? So for me, I need him, and I've told this to his face. I'm not successful thus far, but I'm gonna keep telling him to his face, and we need to all tell him to his face. Make the police job simple. Protect peaceful protests. So that way we can identify bad cops, because guess what? It becomes very easy. If your job is to protect peaceful protests, if you go and push some random person or you pepper spray a black man in the face who's being not violent, who's not doing anything, we know that's you. You can't talk about order and this and this and this and that. You're not doing your job. So it's incumbent upon the mayor to take control of this police force and give them very specific instructions and keep our people safe. And so until he does that, I'm going to keep fighting for it, folks. And that's all I got for now, Dominique.
I'm on mute. We're supposed to be social distancing. We had this pandemic. but Black people are still getting shot and killed. We got this issue of over-policing in Black and brown communities in New York City. We got this issue of George Floyd being killed by the cops. And then we turn on the news and we see looting, rioting, people setting stores on fire. Do you feel as working with legislators, on that level, do you feel like the narrative that has been portrayed, in the midst of reacting to these situations, is hindering the movement for change, or is it impacting it in any way? Can you speak to that, please?
Sure. So I believe very strongly what I think Stephen was, possibly getting at, which is we got to have our own media. I mean, we live in a new world. I don't need to watch MSNBC to know what's going on. I can go on my phone and watch some kid on the street who's just taping what's going on, right? Like we gotta be the ones who are telling our own story, right? When we got brothers out there crying and showing vulnerability, that is a narrative that the mainstream media is not trying to show, because it doesn't fit into that easy narrative of the Black man is violent, the Black man is aggressive, the Black man is hostile, right? So they're not going to push that, because that is a counterpoint to what is an easy narrative. Remember, the mainstream's media main job is to make money. Their main job is not to tell the truth. It's to keep eyeballs focused. And so I think if we want truth, we have to present it ourselves. Now, as it relates to legislation and how the media is driving that, what's really driving us to move now when we could have moved before? I mean, it's not like we didn't have bills that we already knew about. What's driving us to move now is the amount of activism that is happening right now on the ground. And this is always the way it works. When the people move, the politicians move. And I say that as someone who was not a politician, so I'm trying to, obviously I gotta wear both hats right now. But when the people are focused and targeted and specific and out consistently and active, politics moves.
All right. Senator Brian Benjamin, thank you so much for joining us. Definitely want to continue to support you and everything that you're doing. Thank you for having our backs, as they say, out there on the front lines. And kiss baby Caroline for us. We miss Caroline.
Oh, yeah, she running around. That girl is climbing on stuff.
Give her a hug and kiss for us.
I will.
Thank you for joining us, Senator Brian Benjamin.
Wait, Senator, wait. How can the people get in touch with you? How can they, you do great things every day on the ground, like literally. So how can people get in touch with you and follow you on your efforts?
The fastest way, because I know everyone's social media, at NYSen Benjamin on Instagram. Hit me up, DM me. I do all of that. And you can always reach me in my office as well, or email. So my office is 212-222-7357, or my email is bbenjamin@nysenate.gov. But social media, you can easily, I try to be accessible, Ashley and Dominique. I hope y'all, agree with that. So I'm here. I will drop it in the chat. Good comment, Morianne. So I'm gonna drop all my information in the chat, and you can reach me anytime. Jay Shaw Walker, who is my special assistant, is also a very easy way to reach me, and I think she's on the chat right now, and so she could drop her information in as well. Thank you
for joining us, and we definitely want to now include and hear from. We call him the General of Civil Rights. He is Attorney Michael Hardy. For those of you who do not know, he is our General Counsel at National Action Network and also the Executive Vice President of National Action Network. But he has been a real soldier for justice, not only working directly with representing families and being the voice of the voiceless, dealing with our issues and standing up for our issues as people of color for decades. But he has been steadfast in committing his life, committing his work to equality and to fighting for justice for all who deserve. And we are so very honored to have him join us tonight for our virtual National Action Network Youth Huddle. Please welcome at this time the General of Civil Rights, the one and only attorney Michael Hardy. Good evening, and how are you?
I'm very good, Dominique, Ashley, everyone that's on. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here with Huddle tonight, for sure.
Such an honor to have you to join us. We want to hear from you. I know that you probably have heard some of the speakers talk about young people getting involved, young people being engaged, having reactions to a lot of the issues and things that are going on currently in the world today. But you have been doing this work for a long time. You've been really, leading a lot of the efforts that not only National Action Network, but as we as a people have been victorious over in fighting for justice and equality for us. So can you talk to the temperament of what is going on today? How do we stay involved and engaged? And any of the historical and legal references that you personally have been involved in pushing for and helping us to get to this point to where we are now?
All right, absolutely. Well, first, let me just make a quick reference, and people can reach out to National Action Network and maybe get it. For our 25th anniversary at National Action Network, we did a little book on the 25th anniversary, and in that book, I have a piece in there, an article, which is called 25 Years in the Pursuit of Justice, which has a lot of the history. I'm only saying that because that will give the longer version of some of the things that I'll speak to. But, sometimes I think it's really important because we take it for granted, our history. And so sometimes it's important really to get people to actually touch back and really understand the building blocks of where we are today. And if you're part of a social justice movement, whether that's NAN or other movements that's committed to bringing about change peacefully, then I think it's important to know some of that history. And National Action Network, of course, is an organization that has been built directly from the history and the lineage of the movement that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King put together. And of course, the founder of National Action Network is the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton. And I think what people sometimes don't understand and need to go and look at Reverend Sharpton's history is that history didn't come out of a vacuum. Reverend Sharpton was a youth leader, younger than probably everybody on this call right now, even the young folks. When he got into this movement at 12, 13 years old in Operation Breadbasket, which was the one of the arms of SCLC, which was Dr. King's organization. And his trajectory, if you will, really has laid the foundation for the modern struggle for social justice in a nonviolent fashion. And of course, in his immediate history, the highlights of that is beginning with painting the crack houses during the epidemic of the war on drugs, all the way to today with, George Floyd. And in all of that, we talk about COVID-19 and what that pandemic is. We've seen pandemics before, going all the way back to the Middle Ages. We've dealt with the Black Plague, we've dealt with the Spanish pandemic, but there's been a pandemic that has been attached to Black people since they came to these shores, and that's the pandemic of violence against Black people. And there are a lot of ways that people have suggested to fight that violence, but one thing that has been tried and true throughout is the power of nonviolent direct action. And people say that, but really don't understand it. Because I think a lot of times they've not actually taken the time to really, you hear it every day, nonviolent direct action, yeah. But what is that? And even if you're the smartest person in the world, even if you're the most articulate activist, if you're gonna go out and try to build a nonviolent direct action movement, you really should know and understand and make sure that you know and understand the principles that underlie that. And you see the rioting today, and of course, that's the hot subject because we see that. And you think about it, and Reverend Sharpton has said this in very simple ways. I mean, if you think about any of the riots that you can think of that have happened in the course of your lifetime, and then ask the question, well, what did that riot produce? And on the other hand, if you look at movements that have been disciplined and dedicated to nonviolent direct action, demonstration to legislation, you can measure the actual success. And you know, all of success doesn't happen overnight. You know, on some level, you know, people will say, you know, that we're tired, but we can't be tired because, you know, frankly, we are not more than one generation or maybe two generations from, you know, Jim Crow, basically. And when I say Jim Crow, it wasn't until the 1964 Civil Rights Act that people, all people, under the law, had the absolute rights that were given to them in the Constitution. And your father was born in 1954, so he's in that very first generation of people that could honestly say, okay, yes, legally, the Constitution now is supposed to apply to me, but that doesn't mean, you know, that the fight ends there. It's just the history of that struggle. And so if you look at that, you know, you think of all the riots, but then you think about the nonviolent work. The 1964 Civil Rights Act came out of a nonviolent movement. The Voting Rights Act came out of a nonviolent movement. Even in our time, you know, federal legislation on racial profiling came out of a nonviolent movement. And in fact, and this is not to correct the senator, in fact, he may be able to correct me. I believe that as a result of the nonviolent movement surrounding stop and frisk, the first wave of New York City legislation includes a racial profiling law within that can be expanded to New York State. So we've seen the successes that come about through nonviolent direct action, and historically we see it. People sometimes forget the history of nonviolent direct action is something that was founded or first articulated in full, meaningful ways by Mahatma Gandhi. And think about, even today, you hear so many stories about India, one of the largest democracies in the world that was under colonial rule from the British Empire. And they brought the British Empire to its knees through nonviolent direct action, non-cooperation. And people need to really understand what that means. And there's Douglas Turner Ward, who was the founder of the Negro Theater Ensemble, and you're a theater person, Dominique. What did Douglas Turner Ward write that is so significant, and in some ways visually and in a communal way gives you a great example of what nonviolent direct action, non-cooperation is. And it's called a play called The Day of Absence. And what's The Day of Absence? The Day of Absence was a play that took place in a southern town where the white folks woke up one day and there were no black people nowhere to be found. And there was nobody to drive the car, nobody to wash the clothes, nobody to run the train, nobody to clean the house, nobody to take care of the baby, nobody to feed the baby, nobody to do anything. And the town just fell apart. And the whole purpose of that was to show what the real power of nonviolent direct action, non-cooperation can be. And that's something that we need to follow. And so, you know, I'll wrap all of this up in three things. But I just want to read to people because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. And that includes the discussion between whatever people might think the benefits are of rioting and of doing things in a peaceful, nonviolent way. So first, of course, is the mission statement of National Action Network. Why do I bring that up? Because this mission statement was written by Dr. Wyatt T. Walker, who was the executive director of SCLC with Dr. King. And the mission statement, as written by Dr. Walker for National Action Network, reads, National Action Network is a Christian activist organization wedded to the principles of nonviolent philosophy and methodology of Martin Luther King Jr. The central focus of our programs and activities is the establishment of justice that are enunciated in the Constitution of the United States and Bill of Rights. We denounce and abhor violence in any form, whether it be physical, psychic, emotional, or educational. We embrace inclusiveness, but we are committed to the principles of Christian nonviolence without any disrespect to any person or persons of any persuasion. Our motto shall always be no justice, no peace. And frankly, one of the things that really insults me is in the middle of all of this violence is so many people that throw out the chant, no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace stands for the fight and liberation for our people. It does not stand for violence. And then I'll do one other thing, because I don't want to run out of my own time. But this goes directly to the issue of the violence and the rioting. And again, not trying to recreate history, but this is from Dr. King himself in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. And in that book, and I would urge everyone to read it, he has a small section, which if you change the language, take out Negro and put Black and things like that, you're speaking directly to what's happening right now today. And Dr. King writes, the futility of violence in the struggle for racial justice has been tragically etched in all the recent Negro riots. Change it to Black riots. There is something painfully sad about a riot. One sees screaming youngsters and angry adults fighting hopelessly and aimlessly against impossible odds. Deep down within them, you perceive a desire for self-destruction, a suicidal longing. Occasionally, Negroes, change that to Blacks, contend that the 1965 Watts riot and the other riots in various cities represented effective civil rights action. But those who express this view always end up with stumbling words when asked what concrete gains have been won as a result. At best, riots have produced a little anti-poverty money allotted by frightened government officials and a few water sprinklers to cool the children in the ghetto. So that's what he said. And so you can see we're not recreating the wheel when we try to address these things. We've been down this road before, and we need to use our entire history to try to make sure that we're building a successful movement. And I was really so happy today to hear that one of the things that National Action Network is going to be doing is to gather people on the anniversary this year of the March on Washington in honor of the spirit of nonviolent direct action. And I think it's going to be a tremendous day and a way to really recapture the momentum of this movement so that we can really build something off of the tragedy of George Floyd and everyone else, Eric Garner and all the else who have suffered as a result of the lack of respect for human rights and for human life and for Black life.
That is tremendous to hear. Dominique is back. I was gonna say something though from the chat. Basically, one of the things Lorianne Lunsby said is one of the things she's noticed about nonviolent movements is legislative progress. She saw that from the 60s, but what do we follow up with? Because she's seen a lot of the legislation that came out of the movement of the 60s become void 50 years later. How can we maintain what we're fighting for?
Well, we maintain it by voting. And people, again, we take voting for granted. And that's how you maintain it. Voting is a very powerful tool. And I know many of you have been around either with Reverend Sharpton or even Reverend Jackson. If you think of all of the things that we have gained through voting, and even all of the protections that you may have, whether it's in your home, in your communities, whether it's how you pay taxes, whether even how it's determined whether you get unemployment in a pandemic, all has to do with voting. And voting is significantly important and something that if we use it, as Adam Powell said, the power is in our hands.
Amen. I don't know if everyone really got to unpack what he was saying, but everything that you said hit everything on the head that we're talking about. We're going to be able to post this on YouTube and NAN's website. So if you missed anything, everything Attorney Hardy said is critical to this time, as far as organizing, as far as advocacy, as far as every part of the movement that we're talking about tonight. So we thank you for joining us, because you are truly a legend and you're a historic figure in this movement, and we appreciate your guidance at all times. Speaking of what you were talking about, as well as far as legislation nationally and those who are impacted, we have Stevante Clark on the line with us. He is the brother of Stephon Clark. He has become an advocate and an activist nationally. He's unapologetic in his journey and his fight and with his activism. And I wanted to hear from him about how he's leading the fight from the front lines in Sacramento. Stevante, are you with us? Stevante? I see you.
I'm going on, y'all.
Hey, Stevante.
How you doing, sister?
How are you, King? I know you're leading from the front lines. I know this fight has never gotten easier since you lost your brother, but you never let your emotions, even if you did have your emotions, you never let it stop you from pursuing justice for your brother. You're young. You're a young man. You weren't an activist before, but you always were woke. You always knew what you were talking about, and you turned your honestly your pain into your purpose. I truly admire you and your voice and how you have not let the fight for justice for Stephon slip away, because even when the cameras go away and people stop talking about it, you never stopped that journey. You never stopped that journey for your brother, and I respect you. And I want you to share about basically your personal experience, but also about what we're seeing on the front lines. Nobody can be more angry than the families who these impact. Nobody can be more angry than George Floyd's family about what happened to George Floyd. So we can't lose that momentum when we're going outside and protesting. A Gucci bag, looting the Gucci store and tearing down Chanel store is not going to bring back George Floyd's life. So that's not the answer here. And I wanted you to speak to your personal experience and your leadership around what's going on, because I know you're on the front lines. I watch you all the time.
I love you, girl. You know, Ashley, I love you, girl. You know, I love you and Dominique, but Ashley, I love you a lot, girl. You know, Al Sharpton for president. First and foremost, glory to God. Thank y'all for having me. And my personal experience is Ashley put it so eloquently, is from turning my pain into purpose. And in order for me to do that, I had to direct my passion. At first, when I jumped on that mayor's dais, my passion had no direction, so it was chaotic. Now that my passion has direction, it is fulfilled and led me to a righteous purpose. And I believe there's a lot of families in pain that have the passion, because there's power in pain. I believe there's power in anger, but without that passion being directed, it's chaotic. And if you're not directing your passion, then you're not going to be able to fulfill your purpose. I really believe that. And that's how I fight. I have nothing. I lost 2 brothers. I lost my big brother to community violence. I lost my younger brother to police violence. I lost a twin sister at birth. You know, I grew up in a broken neighborhood, single mother. You know, I was so poor, I didn't know I was poor. You know, I'm still so poor, I don't know I'm poor. You know, but you know, and everybody put it so eloquently when they were talking about so many the pandemic going on, and then the economic issues on top of this police brutality on the front lines in Sacramento. I've been on the front lines for 3 days straight. I haven't taken no break. I've eaten about a slice of pizza. You know, I've been drinking a lot of tea. My voice is gone because you can't stop the revolution, you know? So, you know, the fight don't stop for me. You know, I'm on the front line. If anybody is to get tear gassed first, it'll be me. If anybody's to get hit with a rubber bullet, it'll be me first. And then after me, it'll be our white allies, because I got them right on the front line. Ain't no black people on my front line, none but white allies and non-people of color on my front lines. And we stand in solidarity. But right now we're grieving. And the anger you see out in Sacramento, all my people, we're nonviolent, we're peaceful. And the anger you see is righteous anger. You know, we sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know, you ain't gonna keep beating our asses and killing us and murdering us and keeping us in these jails, you know. You know, I love the movements from the 60s. I respect everybody, Jesse Jackson and everybody. I love everybody. But goddamn it, we tired, you know. We tired. We are tired, you know. And what we need right now is what I'm starting in Sacramento. Number one, a de-escalation tactical team. That's what I'm starting here, because I don't trust the police. I'm not anti-law enforcement. I'm anti-police terrorism. I'm anti-killer cops. I'm not anti-law enforcement. I love everybody. I love the police. Shout out to the police, whatever. You know what I mean? But I'm anti-law. I'm anti-killer cops. I'm sick of them killing and brutalizing our people and not being held accountable. And I've said numerous and countless of times, Ashley, transparency without accountability means nothing. It means nothing. What good is it if I could see what you do and not be able to hold you accountable? It's pointless.
So you've seen this happen. This happened with your brother in a very public way. The whole world was screaming, you know, Stephon Clark. And as a family, how did you feel about the reaction of the world, you know, to your brother, and then how you felt about the outcome of getting justice? How did you feel about that? Were you wanting people to be angrier? Were you wanting people to come out more? Do you feel like the public's reaction to your brother's death publicly helped, you know, to help to ease the pain of you and your family? Can you speak a little bit to that? Because a lot of people are feeling like, you know, we're doing this in the name of George Floyd, but we also, you know, want to be out there because we feel like we want to represent the family and carry on the strength of the anger that the family's feeling. Can you speak to that perspective, having to have been in that situation before?
Yeah, that's a tough situation. You know, that's a really good question. You know, it's tough because after my brother's situation, I was knee deep in the grief. And the emotions from my big brother came back of losing my big brother. I lost my big brother at the age of 12. So I didn't really grieve over that. You know, I kind of just kept going in my life. And then when Stephon died, when you see me on CNN do what I'm doing, and you see me jump on the mayor's dais, you know, that's me really grieving, you know what I mean? And then to see on the internet how, in the news, how people treated me and talked about me. Oh, he crazy. Oh, he's on drugs. Oh, somebody called me a crisis actor. They said, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I make black people look bad. One person said the wrong brother died. They called me homosexual. You know, I was torn down to pieces, you know, and then I was broken so bad to one point, I questioned God. I said, God, I didn't do nothing. Why they mad at me? And then I felt like that if you treated us bad because we did nothing, you know, I believe that you need to, you know, hurt people. So I believe you need to be held accountable. Why are you messing with us? You should be talking about those cops who, you know, y'all looking at my brother's text messages. What about these cops' text messages? What about these cops' internet searches? You know, everybody listening to the fake news and the fake media. I was just hurt. And to be able to talk to people like the families of Mike Brown and Tamir Rice and Eric Garner and so many others, you know, their opinions and what they said resonated with me more than anybody and anything anyone else said, because I know that they know what I was dealing with firsthand. And then you're sorry. People say, I'm sorry. I send my condolences. What the hell I'm gonna do with I'm sorry and your condolences? The only thing you could do is pray for me, feed me, or give me some money. Now, if you ain't doing none of those three and you ain't standing in solidarity when it comes to the revolution, get the hell out of my way, because you standing in the way. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the goddamn problem. And I'm sick of people, you know, of course, we know Black people killing each other and we need to be fighting the system and all this and all that, but we have been oppressed for far too long by not just law enforcement. Let's not just we got to hold everybody accountable. We're talking about these elected officials, law enforcement, these so-called community leaders, these activists. We need to hold these activists accountable, because I don't see not enough accountability on they trifling poverty pimp ass. You know, excuse my French. I'm sorry. I'm with NAN. I can't cuss y'all with the church. Shout out to all the pastors.
No, but Devontae, we want to hear more about, you know, what you've been doing also to clear, you know, to continue, you know, this fight in memory of your brother. Can you talk a little bit about the systemic change part, about the Stephon Clark bill and what you are doing on the ground every day to really work to change the legislation?
That's how we get things changed. Legislative change, changing the law, going out there and fighting for bills to get passed. Less than 2 years after my brother died, we got Stephon Clark law passed. And what Stephon Clark law is it changes the standard of use of force. Instead of reasonable, it changes it to necessary. So you can't just say, oh, I fear for my life. It had to be necessary. You know, the law can work within that. You know, that use of force policy hasn't been updated since 1872. That's 8 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Yet it was just updated 2 years after the death of my brother. This is sad. You know, and if we don't implement Stephon Clark law nationwide, and Stephon Clark law is just a start. We need more effective, comprehensive, and tougher laws. But Stephon Clark law is the beginning of getting real change. We have to change the law, because the system, what happens is, you know, I read a quote, it says, our people suffer from a lack of knowledge, you know what I mean? And I believe we have to get to know the law. We have to get engaged in these politics. We have to get engaged in going to writing our centers, calling our centers, getting to know who our local assembly members are and whatnot. Because Stephon Clark law, it might not stop this from ever happening again, but it will send a message that, you know, we're not only are we not dealing with this anymore, if you do it again, you will be held accountable under not just the people, but under the law. Under the law. They're not scared of the people, obviously, you can tell that, but they are scared of the law. They are scared of breaking the law.
Devontae, I do want to ask a question from the chat, and I do know that your time is valuable. We want to definitely thank you for joining us tonight. But one question from the chat was, they would like to know how you feel about our so-called white allies on the front line starting the riots and the looting. Again, you know, we want to see justice. We want to see this all the way through to a conviction for the cops. You've been in that situation before. Can you speak now to how you feel about white allies getting out, starting to riot and loot? Does that deter the message of the movement? How do you feel about that?
Well, I was listening to my big brother, Reverend not too long ago, and he was saying that you ain't never seen no looter run out with no justice, no peace sign. You know what I mean? They ain't no allies of ours. If you out there looting and doing all that, you weren't out there for George Floyd. You weren't out there protesting for the cause. You weren't out there standing in solidarity for the movement. You were out there to wait till we got saying we had to say to capitalize. You're out there you're hurting the movement. So I don't believe anybody doing that. Anybody's, you know, the white allies with me, they stand on the front line and get pepper sprayed, tear gassed, be nonviolent, get hit with a rubber bullet. You know, they are standing on the front line in solidarity to be peaceful and nonviolent. Whatever happens after that, that our Black brothers and sisters don't get affected first, because I know from experience that they will be more lenient on white people. Excuse my, I don't know if I said anything wrong, but they'll be more lenient on white people than they will our people. And I know that for a fact. So I keep white brothers and sisters on my side, left and right. And even my lawyer is a white man, a Jewish fella, and his son is my security guard. And so I keep him close, girl.
Devontae Clark, everyone, thank you so much. We will continue to hear updates from you. Anything you need from us, as you know, you call. But we definitely want to commend you, brother, for taking a stand, for speaking out, for being a voice for us. We need you out there on the front lines, and we thank you for all that you're doing for us. You have something else?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I love you too, Dominique. I love you too, Ashley. I love the whole Sharpton family. But what I want to say is thank y'all for supporting and being with my family since day one. I love y'all unconditionally. My heart is with everybody watching and tuning in. And I also want to say, if you want to stay connected and join this movement, if you're watching from NAN Youth Huddle, and you want to help and you want to see what's going on the front lines in Sacramento, because I'm on the streets every day, please follow me on Instagram, official _Stevontae Clark, or follow me on Facebook, Stevontae Clark, or check me out this weekend on Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton. All right, y'all. Take it easy. God bless you.
I want to go now to the city now. We have someone on the line who is also no stranger to the fight for justice and equality, who is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, currently on the ground, definitely working to make sure that our voices are heard and represented. He is a NAN baby. He is the former crisis director for National Action Network, but he is now the founder of the Crisis Action Center of New York, a seasoned social justice advocate. We know and love him. And while the Crisis Action Center that he founded is really centered and focused around affordable housing for people, especially people of color in the city of New York, he also, of course, fights against racial inequality and promotes equality in the realm of education. And he's with us, joining us now from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Please welcome our very own Reverend Dr. Kevin Mccall. Reverend Kev, you on? Hello. Okay, well, he may be having technical issues. I think he's calling me now, but Ashley, if you can help get Reverend Kevin Mccall on. I do want to thank, again, Attorney Michael Hardy, our General Counsel and Executive Vice President, for those words of wisdom. We call him the General of Civil Rights for a reason, and our very own freedom fighter, Senator Brian Benjamin, for joining us tonight. We really, really appreciate y'all. I do want to, if Kevin is on, if he's not on, somebody let me know when he is on. No? Okay. Well, I do want to go then now to a sister who really is an advocate for change. She is on the front lines for justice and equality as well. But she's also a diva. She is a fashion designer, a model. She is, she doesn't just design for women and to make us help us look good, but she is also the CEO and founder of We Believe, and that's a nonprofit organization and leadership pipeline for women and girls of color, partnered with educational institutions and companies across the United States. We Believe provides the arm both working women and aspiring change makers, some young as middle schoolers, and we have some on tonight, but they provide them with resources that historically have been deliberately kept from their reach. And she is on with us tonight. We're so blessed and honored to have her, Sister Chelsea Miller. Sister Chelsea, are you on with us tonight?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, good evening. And I apologize, my voice is gone. I'm sure you guys
you've been advocating for change. I'm sure you've been out in those
streets last night. That's why her voice is gone.
Yeah, I promise it's not this raspy. But yeah, so I'm excited to be here this evening with all of you. I had the honor of being able to speak 2 years back, I believe, at the National Action Network Youth Convention, talking about things related to activism, social entrepreneurship, economic mobility. So being back with all of you in this youth huddle is really, really exciting to talk about the work, but it's unfortunate, right, that we're at a time where we're in a crisis, that we're at a time when we're in the tale of two Americas, right? And one of the things that we say when we're marching, we mobilize, is the fact that America has been burning long before Minneapolis. America has been burning for hundreds of years, right? And so when we think about this movement and the work that needs to be done and what's happening on the ground, to be honest, it's saddening. It's saddening because people are looking for direction. We're in the middle of a global pandemic where Black lives and Black bodies have to choose whether or not to be on the forefronts or if they should remain safe, right? And to be in a space where I'm an activist, where I'm an entrepreneur, and understanding the burden and the importance of being at the center of this march, being at the center of this movement, and being on the front lines as well. Because I know if I go missing, people are going to care. So I'm going to make sure that I'm in front of our Black brothers and sisters that didn't go to an Ivy League institution, where we can have allies to call up, white folks to call up, right? Organizations that are behind them to do this work. And so I think for me, what I've been seeing in New York City with a lot of the mobilizing and the movement is that Minneapolis, right, was ground zero. But right now in New York, that's ground zero for our state, right? And so we have to think about how are we going to be able to bring people together during this time. There's a lot of looting, there's a lot of rioting. I was out Saturday. It was crazy. It was crazy, crazy, crazy. Myself and a group of protesters, organized protesters, right, trying to make sure we got the message across, had to protect Target at Barclays Center from being broken into by people, agitators, rioters who were looking, right, to take away from the movement. Wow. And then Sunday night, when we came out, the reason why we came out and organized Freedom March NYC, that was the march that we organized to commemorate the 99th anniversary of the burning down of Black Wall Street in New York, and it was the peaceful protest of the night. There was choppers that were in the air. People said the KKK were coming, but we didn't go home. We didn't go home because this is our city. This isn't Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. And we have a right to be here and to advocate, because if we don't, then the media is going to completely shift the narrative. They're going to tell a different story. And so when I think about what happens next or what movement building looks like next, Freedom March NYC yesterday was one of many. We worked with Black Lives Matter, Greater New York on it. One of the things that we were talking about to white allies, protesters, was the importance of the November election coming up, because that's the time to vote not only for the president, but for Congress, right, for all of these things that are happening. But also I would push and say that we have reached a crux where it's not just enough to vote. We have to come up with strategy. We have to think about a utopia and not just demands for this dystopia, because then we're going to be in a situation where every few months, every few weeks, every few days, there's going to be another ask that we have of policymakers and politicians and presidents. And so my question for all of us is, what does it look like for our own utopia? And so I know Siobhan Newsom is currently running for Congress. One of the things that she's been talking about is the importance of having a civilian review board when it comes to monitoring and checking police brutality and behavior in communities. I know that there's different legislation that's being pushed, but the real challenge that we're seeing on the ground is that there's a lot of voices, but not enough mics. And there's civil rights leaders, there are organizations that date back, right, decades doing this work, who have the resources, who have the ability to amplify what's going on in the ground. But how do we make sure that people are listening to them? And it's not just the activists that are now coming out and standing and kneeling with the police and saying solidarity, but we're actually putting, right, the resources and the energy behind mobilizing. So we have Juneteenth coming up. What's going on in June 19th? Are we marching to DC? Are we collectively creating chapters and everyone is mobilizing and we're having weekly calls where we're bringing people together and talking about marshals that need to be on the ground and talking about how to de-escalate when things are happening within your protest? What is the general effort going to look like over these, not even months? Because truth be told, I think the March on Washington in August is going to be incredible, an incredible moment to stand for something. But today, tomorrow, this week, cities are burning. So what are we doing now to make sure that they don't silence the narrative, that they don't shift the narrative, that they don't co-opt the story? And so I'm curious to hear about that. I know we've been in touch with Black Lives Matter Greater New York. They've been doing an incredible job of marshaling and rallying behind the work that we're doing. There's a protest that's going to be organized tomorrow as well in New York City. And I definitely want to call on NAN and NAN's resources and the support of NAN and NAN's chapters, right, to be able to mobilize and amplify. And being a part of We Believe is a unique position because we have chapters across different states in the US. And so I've been doing the work of activism within the entrepreneurship space for so long, but now we're taking it to the streets because this time demands it. And so let's talk about it. And
Chelsea, you worked in the Obama White House.
Yes.
And you also are on the ground, you feel the temperament directly, physically, being on the ground on the front lines, really fighting and advocating for the George Floyds of the world. But now we're in a pandemic, people are literally worried and frightened for their lives, but also angry and wanting to step out and take action. So how would you encourage people to definitely practice safety, especially as we're approaching the summer months? But also, are you encouraging youth to vote? And how important is voting in this election?
Absolutely. That's something that we're definitely encouraging. One of the things that we're doing out of We Believe is a task force for women and girls impacted by COVID-19. One of the things that we'll be working on within the task force is a committee specifically on policy and advocacy, digital campaigns, different efforts around how do we make sure that women and girls of color particularly are registering to vote, because we know that historically it's Black women that have carried, right, the Democratic Party. And so we need all of our 17 turning 18-year-olds to make sure that they are voting, that they are registering to vote, and that their voices are being heard. But across the Black community, right, mobilizing around that. And so every march that we go to, that's one of the things that we're talking about, registering to vote, making sure that your voice is heard. But I also think that there needs to be education models around the country on making sure that people are registered to vote, not just 30 days before the election or telling people that they should do it, but making sure that we have resources that are on the front lines, that are in people's faces, that when we're marching, that we have, whether that be booklets or pamphlets or digital, right, collateral that we can share with people on how they can register to vote, because it's one thing to be angry, it's another thing to strategize, and we have to figure out how do we move the movement to the strategic element of things. And within the activism space, I will add that there's a lot of politics even within that. And now there's this urgency to think about how do we merge a lot of these conversations across even the different organizations within activism, right? How do we make sure that everyone is on the same page so that when Reverend Al Sharpton goes on the news or Tamika Mallory goes on the news, whoever goes in, it's the same exact demands and the same exact message. And when we say dates, we mean that, right? And so having these different conversations and figuring out how to mobilize is going to be the next step in the phase of New York City for sure, but something that we definitely have to figure out how to implement across the US and globally, because we see that there are protests happening in London, there are protests happening all over the world in support of Black lives.
Chelsea, you are phenomenal, and thank you for your work, and thank you for your voice, and thank you for standing for and with us. Means so much. People are asking all over, how can we get involved with We Believe? What's next for We Believe? If you can put some information in the chat so we can stay involved and engaged.
But also, Chelsea, I want to jump in. I'm sorry that I'm going to interrupt you. But just to respond to what Chelsea said, I think that everything that you said was on point. Especially about unity and about a whole bunch of voices and not enough mics. I felt that in the heart. But at the end of the day, I feel like this coming together and unifying, and actually this is like a first step as far as I know. I know you work with Kyra from NAN. I know you all Alliance Sisters. But at the end of the day, I feel like we all know who's out there. We're all doing similar work, but we're not doing it together. So I feel like now the fact that we're having these conversations, and now that a connection is there, now we can hold each other accountable. Now you can send that invitation, or you can send that invite, and now if we don't respond, now you can blast us. And same here.
I'll be sending it, y'all.
I'm so serious. So I'm gonna do the same on your part, and I appreciate you saying that. And let us continue to have that same keep that same energy all the way around for the movement.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Chelsea. And if you can put the information in the chat, that'd be great.
I will.
I do want to incorporate Brother Marquis Skinny Averett into the conversation. He joined us a few weeks ago on Huddle's NAN virtual Huddle, and we definitely appreciate his voice. He's an activist, of course, by passion and an organizer by training, born and raised in Columbus, Georgia, but he's no stranger to taking on issues, and he's worked on many different campaigns as we're talking about voting and the electoral process all across the country for the last decade, and we are so honored to have him join us again. Marquise, are you with us? Good evening.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So I'll just jump right into it. As a civil rights activist, you've been hearing some of the speakers that are talking tonight. You just heard from Chelsea, who's really working to really advocate for change in many different facets. And I know that you've also been personally impacted by COVID-19, you know, working on the front lines. But how can you speak to how your activism has changed? A lot of people are saying that George Floyd is a turning point in the movement for social activism and social justice. Can you speak to that personally, and how in your work, and also how you feel the temperament overall is on the ground as we are in our current times today?
Well, thank you, Dominique, and thank you, Ashley, and the entire NAN team for all of the great work that you continue to do. These last couple of weeks have been daunting, I think, to say the least. But I think that there are a couple of things that we should look at. One of the things I think we should look at is that I've been focusing on specifically in my hometown of Columbus. I think that it's good to stand together in solidarity during protests. But I think that it would mean even more if we could not only have a protest, but let's go protest at the voting booth. Next week, June the 9th, is the primary election across the state of Georgia. And so all of this week, what we are experiencing is early voting. So on Thursday of this week, we'll be gathering a couple of hundred of my friends. And so we'll be gathering at the early voting site in Columbus. Well, we'll hear from some of those families who have been directly influenced and impacted by police brutality. And then we're going to take our protest into the voting booth. Because one of the things that we realize is that in Columbus, Georgia specifically, we have a DA who is up, who has shown herself not friendly to the Black Lives Matter movement. We have a sheriff who's up, who has shown himself not a friend, herself not a friend of the Black Lives Movement. And so I think that it's best if we get them out of office and not only replace them with somebody that look like us, but replace them with somebody that think like us. And I think that one of the things that I've been saying here recently is that we spent a lot of time talking about, hey, you know, we need to change legislation. We need legislation that says that Black Lives Matter. We need legislation that prevents police from knocking our heads between the wall. Yeah. But before we can get legislation, we need public officials in those offices who can pass that legislation. We need public officials who can pass that legislation. I'm not I'm not going to say I'm for or against rioting, but one thing I will say is that I understand. For the last 8 years, I know specifically, since the murder of Trayvon Martin, at least once a year we get together and we march for the same exact thing over and over and over again, and absolutely nothing changes. And so I think that that it's time that we change the laws and elected officials who think like us. But I think that is also, I think about a quote from Malcolm when he said that today is time to stop singing and to start swinging. And I'm not going to take Malcolm that he meant that violently. But I think that he meant that it's time for us to straighten our backs up. I've been hearing a lot of people say that Donald Trump is trying to start a race war. No, the war been started. The white supremacists have been walking into churches, into movie theaters, into schools, and shooting anybody and everybody in their path. We're the only ones that are not fighting back. And I think one of the past questions that was on the list that you sent, that I was sent, also addressed the what Killer Mike and T.I. and Mayor Keisha Bottoms said. And I know that they mean well, but the question becomes, whose interests are they representing? We have this thing going around where we say that Atlanta is the Black Mecca, yet Black people own less than 25% of the homes here. Black people have been experiencing the worst when it comes to the economic doom, and gentrification is pushing everybody out of the city of Atlanta. And so I don't believe that Atlanta is an exception to police brutality. We just witnessed on live TV the police brutalizing students from Morehouse and Spelman. Thank God that the mayor did the right thing and got rid of them. But all the time, we don't have that video footage that would be used to hold police accountable. And so I don't think that Atlanta is an exception to what's going on here in the world. I think that Atlanta, being the birthplace of the civil rights movement, that this is the perfect place to have this conversation. And I think that we should also be on the front lines of this movement.
Amen. I'm hearing that Reverend Kevin Mccall has joined us. Again, he is joining us now. I'm hearing that Reverend Kevin Mccall is now on. Reverend Kevin Mccall is live in Minneapolis, Minnesota right now. He's been advocating, of course, on the front lines for justice for all of us for so many years. But
don't leave us, Marquise. Hold on.
Yes? Reverend Mccall?
Yes, I'm here.
Good evening.
How are you, Dominique? Hello, everyone.
Hi, thanks for joining us. Can you give us what's going on out in Minneapolis? What's the temperament?
What's going on?
What's the deal?
Today we decided to take the brother of George Floyd to the site. We wanted to go to the site. He was the first family member to visit the site where the police officer in Minneapolis killed him. It was very emotional for him. But he called for peace and he called for unity. And he wanted to let everyone know that you have to be able to continue to do that, not loot, but put up with your left hand call for peace and with your right hand call. And a lot of people have been respecting that when we were here in Minneapolis. We continue to be able to be on the front lines of dealing with this issue of police accountability. You don't have to loot. You don't have to tear up your own community if you want justice. I mean, I'm a student of Reverend Sharpton, so I know that very well.
Now, a lot of people are saying, of course, the temperament across the country is, people are looting and rioting to show demonstration in reaction to the violence that we're seeing, of course, down in Minneapolis. And a lot of people are saying, we want to charge the cops, the rest of the 3 cops involved in this situation. We need to see charges. And Brother Marquise, I also want you to speak to this because we just don't know. I mean, we know that Officer Chauvin has been charged with 3rd-degree murder, but the other cops have not been charged. We also know or don't know if charges can be increased for Officer Chauvin currently. Can the hate crime situation be brought on as a charge? Can both of you gentlemen speak to that as you know your work in dealing with cases like this as they have been progressing?
Yes, I
think we lost Reverend Mccall. But while we get him back, you want to talk to that?
He's here. He's up.
Reverend Mccall, somebody?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. I said that the charges should have been murder in the 1st degree because it was done with intent. And we needed to really put the pressure on because the hate crime task could be doing. And with Keith Ellison to really deal with the necessary practices of keeping the pressure on with charging all 4 of the officers. So I think that justice is going to be swiftly in terms of what he is doing, but you got to continue to keep the pressure on and deal with those individuals who are responsible for killing Mr. Floyd.
Can you talk about next steps? What's next steps for the people? How should we stay involved, activated, engaged on this issue, of course, to get justice as the end result?
Well, the next steps for myself and others to continue to keep peaceful protests.
Reverend Mccall, you're breaking up. Okay, Reverend Mccall.
Reverend Mccall is live from the ground in Minneapolis. I believe he's about to leave Minneapolis. So sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. If he comes back, we'd love to hear it. But if Marquise, if you could talk a little bit about the hate crime bill, I know that you have worked on that or have some experience with that. If you can talk to that portion as well, because a lot of people want to see more charges being brought on to feel like, of course, we're progressing towards justice. Can you speak to that element?
Yeah, well, down here in Georgia, the dean of the Georgia State Legislature, Calvin Smyrie, he's been working in committee for this hate crime bill. And what I've seen has actually been kind of mind-boggling how fast the Republican Speaker of the House, how fast he said that it was necessary. And so it's a positive to see this moving through the legislature and committees beginning to put the work together. And I think that it's important that, I remember, I'm not the biggest Hillary Clinton fan, but one of the things that she told the Black Lives Matter protesters when she met them in 2016 was that it's hard to change people's hearts. But we can change legislation, and I think that that's important to note. And earlier, I think that it got misconstrued that I'm not for riots. I'm not for violence. I'm not for looting. But when it comes to what is going on in America, I certainly understand why people are mad. You can turn on your TV right now on CNN and see police in any city across this country right now beating protesters up. This very system that we're fighting right now. And so I think that it's incumbent upon us to, like I said earlier, we've been fighting this for a long time. And I don't want to see the world fired up for a week. And then a week later, we all gone on about our business. I agree with one of the things that the young lady said earlier. I believe that we all need the same messaging. I think that that's incredibly important. While people are talking to the media and talking to the news and talking to elected officials, we should all be saying absolutely the same thing.
Right. How can we stay involved in your movement and your advocacy and what you're doing? If you can put that in the chat as well. And we would love to continue to have you on as I bring on our brother Derek Perkinson, who is our New York Field Director for National Action Network, to join in on the conversation with Marquise and others. Derek, you are an organizer on the ground, but you've also been directly affected by COVID. And a lot of people are asking in the chat, well, I want to march, I want to get involved, but what about my safety? How do we continue to advocate safety and stay safe in this pandemic, but also feel the need and urge to engage, to activate, and to be involved in demonstrations and raising our voice, to seek change for justice. Good evening.
Right. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here. It was a treat to hear everyone you had on. Was awesome. Michael Hardy to Fatima to Pastor. Fantastic. That's the thin line when you talk about protesting and following the guidelines of coronavirus and staying safe, social distance. Protesting in the manner we did, which for Saturday, and what they're doing now, there's no way in the world you could social distance 6 feet apart. So the only way you could do is to have a mask on, have some gloves on, something to that effect. That's the only thing you can honestly do. Of course, the antibacterial and stuff like that. But let me touch upon some things all previous callers that touched upon. There is a big problem on protesting and having people in the audience, they call them operatives, looting, rioting. We're from a community where we grow up, one person throw a punch, everybody's gonna jump in and join in. One person throw a bottle in this type of environment, everybody's gonna join in. So we have to be very diligent. Everything should be peaceful, nonviolent. That's what we do until justice is served. And we'll keep the process up. We don't want it to die down, so we gotta keep the momentum going. There's a couple other things I want to touch on. Brian Benjamin mentioned something.
When we're talking about
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. You were saying, I'm sorry.
No, because Brian mentioned the police department and the mayor and this, that, and the third. The change in the police department has to come from the union, Dominique, Ashley, Huddle. It has to come from the union. Pat Lynch runs New York City. He knows that these mayors have term limits. These city council members have term limits. These union people don't have term limits. They're voted in. When I had the opportunity, pleasure, and the heartfelt pain of going to trial every day with the Gardner family, Emerald and Gwen, going to that, no one in Pat Lynch inner circle is of color. Not one person is there of color. And this is Pat Lynch. He attacks our governor. They attack our mayor because they know they run the city. And then we take it a step further, changing the union, get people of color. The police department, the members of the force, the minorities in the department need to step up. They see these people. I saw something on Instagram where a New York City police officer did the white supremacist sign. We can't have people like that in our community policing us. And there's a lot of them also that are judges and lawyers and all sorts of things. And they're putting us in the rock and the hard place. So you have a culmination of years of this stuff, of watching it on video, of no justice is being done. And people are tired of it. They don't care about social distancing at this point. And I don't blame people for feeling like that. I'm Minister Marshall. I don't advocate violence or any of that stuff, but you know, I can't tell people how to express the way they feel.
Derek, a lot of people are, we're talking about systemic change, of course, and we work with a legacy organization. And you work directly, very involved in getting out the count for the census. Can you talk about the importance of that and your advocacy in that, and how we relate that to systemic change and, you know, fighting for resources that we need in our community and so on and so forth, and explain to the young people how important
yes
it is to be involved and to know about?
Yes, real quick on the census. The census is how we are giving not only a whole bunch of funding for health, education, medical, senior citizen programs, youth programs, infrastructure in our communities. The census is used for political representation that divides our district where you live. Your zip code is divided into districts. And a district representation means more money from DC, Washington, DC. That's where the representation would come from. So the money comes from DC. That's more funding. So you're talking about hundreds of millions to billions of dollars for a district in a census setting. So for New York City has over hundreds of districts. You're talking about billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. So it's very important to be counted. And the struggle we're having in the count in the African-American community, in the minority community, is that men and children are not being counted. We cannot blame the children. Children are not going on the computer to count the whole household. That's not their responsibility. It's the adults. So then we have men need to be counted, and that's bad. And children are not being counted, and that's bad. Whereas the numbers show that middle income, high middle income to wealthy people are being counted because they know the importance of it. And it goes back to voting. It all comes back to voting. If we don't have representation, how do we change the laws to make us not suffer a fate of George Floyd? I took an oath, I said an oath to everybody out there, and I take an oath to all of you. I would never stand by and see somebody on your neck and you gasping for breath. I will intervene in some way, risk my life, my freedom. I will never see that, and I'm not going to film it. And I had everybody give me that same oath. We cannot stand by and start filming. There's a lot of millennials, we like to film, I understand. But if something needs attention, we have to pay attention to that. Because things could have been done. There's no way in the world in 2020 a man should die like that. And, you know, it breaks my heart to do that. So to see that. And rest in peace, George Floyd. We're going to continue to fight for you and on the front lines. So I want to say a quick story, Dominique. Actually, Huddle. I want to say a quick story real because it refers to something that was said earlier. I have a cousin that raised me. He's a little older. You know, if we grow up in the hood and we grow up a certain way, you want your kids to live better. So his kid lived better than what he went through a lot. And his son don't know anything about the hood. Harlem, nothing. He don't know. He grew up in the suburbs. So he called me today and said, Derek, let me know next time you're going out to the protest. My son needs to see this. He needs to be a part of it. Call me. I'll bring him down there to get with you. And I said, you know what? That wasn't the first call I got today, but I got it from my bigger cousin. And it meant a lot. He never reaches out to ask for nothing. And this was something he felt he had to get his son involved in. And I see a whole bunch of, you guys know, Patrice knows, she's on the call. I got 5 God kids. They come to the House of Justice. They owe me every day. They saw me Saturday. Are you going back Sunday? They call me today. Are you going back today? We want to go. People are angry, upset, and I am happy that the younger people are stepping forward and standing up and protesting. Don't ever let somebody tell us voting don't matter and protesting doesn't matter, because it absolutely does.
Thank you, Derek.
I'm a little fired up today.
Our new field director. Thank you for your work that you do,
Thank you, guys.
hard work. I hope your wife is doing better. She was affected by COVID-19. So we definitely have been keeping her in our prayers and hope that she's doing better. But thank you, Derek, for your advocacy, for your leadership, and for your support, especially to the young people, the next generation of leaders. I want to bring on Fatima Barry right now. Fatima is an activist, an organizer, an educator, and she's also, of course, an AKA. Shout out to the AKAs who was involved in a lot of protests over this past weekend. Fatima, are you on? Good evening. I want to bring you in on the conversation. And I wanted to ask you, because you have been one who have been involved. You were involved in March with us last year, you know, at National Action Network's Youth Huddle's first gun violence march that we did in Harlem last year. And now June is Gun Violence Awareness Month. And I wanted to talk to you about, you know, how you feel, what you think we can be doing around reducing gun violence, of course, in 2020, and just your thoughts on the temperament of the country and what you've been seeing on the ground being a protester in this, you know, pandemic and in light of the situations.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you for having me, Dominique, Ashley, NAN Youth Huddle. Very pleased to be here to have this opportunity, a space to, you know, voice my opinion, my thoughts about what is currently going on. And yeah, so last year to the gun violence protest march, and that was the first year that we've done it. And a year later, I feel like the way in which we can combat gun violence is to, one, try and get them out of the hands of those who shouldn't have them, but also educate. So guns are not bad. It's the people that have guns that are bad. And like the ones that are against us, like those KKK groups, those white anarchists, you know, they have guns. So I don't think that having a gun is a bad thing. I think that not being educated on how to use it and how to protect yourself with it is where we get lost with gun violence. And so I think educating our children, our young children, like the importance of like not using a gun violently, but in the ways to protect yourself, things of that sort. Not having illegal firearms. No one should have like an illegal firearm. Those are like the first steps, I think, to like combating gun violence. But in regards to just like this bigger like climate of just like COVID-19 and these deaths that are just constantly reoccurring, as we keep saying, they're like two pandemics that African Americans in the United States are fighting right now. One of the longest being the systematic oppression and systematic racism that we are dealing with. It's a day by day thing for me. It's not easy being a Black woman, a Black teacher who has, you know, been in quarantine since like March 11th, really coming outside yesterday to march with Chelsea and Naila and Black Lives Matter Greater New York. It's been really hard to stay at home and not be able to talk to my students about these occurrences. And so like last year when things like this would occur, I would always like cut out whatever lesson plan it was for the day, and we're going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation, and this is a safe space for my students. I want you to tell me how you feel about this. I'm going to tell you how I feel, and this is just a dialogue between me and my students. And so for me, it's just been really hard as an educator, just not having that space to have with my students. I teach 8th grade, so for me, to me, they're kids, but when they walk out the school building, they're seen as adults, regardless of what anyone says. Like a Black child is never seen as a child, unfortunately. And so I try to equip my students with that knowledge of maintaining a certain demeanor when they are in public. I believe Dominique mentioned it earlier about how we as African Americans must, you know, be better than our white contemporaries, regardless of what they're doing. So we know that at these protests, so many of the antagonists and the anarchists are whites. They're not people who are actually for the movement. They're just using our movement to get what they want. And so knowing these things and continuing to keep that professionalism and our stance during these times is what I feel is really important. I remember yesterday there was a group, I think Chelsea mentioned, like, the group a group bumped into us who were extremely violent. They were jumping on cars and I had to scream at them. I'm like, get down. This is not what we're here for. And if you're trying to be violent and if you want to ruin property, you have to leave this group. Like, this is not the protest for you. And for me, it's like, I don't want to tell people how to protest. Like, I peacefully protest. I'm not looting. To me, that just does not solve anything for me, but I don't want to be the one to tell others how to, you know, voice how they feel, how angry they are. Like, it's people are angry, people are sad, people are upset. Like, no one should ever be subjected to watching someone being killed on camera. Like, my students should not wake up in the morning, first thing they see is a Black man being killed. That should not occur. And so I can understand why people are so angry and just don't know how to properly voice their anger. And so I think that protesting in so many ways will bring about change. I feel like the very first time I protested was with you guys in 2012 for Trayvon Martin, and it was a small group, and we did the work, and you all moved on to other states and you continued those marches and stuff. But I felt like yesterday there were so many different group of protesters throughout New York that it just, for me, it was just like, this is different. It's very, very different from the time before. And I think that the isolation and us being home and having that time to go out and mobilize is one of the reasons people have been cooped up for 2 months, you know, and they're angry. And so when they come out there, they want to voice their opinion. And yes, they're still putting themselves at risk because COVID-19 is still very much alive, still very much affecting our communities. And we still have to be cautious of these things when we are protesting. So if you did attend a protest, I do suggest that you take 14 days to not interact with any seniors or any children, because you could be at risk of exposing them to the virus. And so just keeping that in mind as well. Like, it's so much going on, but I do think that there is a silver lining. There is going to be some type of like change positive outcome from all of this. I think that the most important thing, as many have said on this call, is that voting is what we really need to do. We need to make sure that everybody who is able to vote, everyone who is of age, goes out and votes, because it matters. And even though we think it doesn't matter, it really does make a difference. And I think what makes the most difference is voting for your local and state officials first, because those are the ones that you can really speak to directly. A lot of people love to go and vote for the president every 4 years, but those are not the people that's going to really help your community. You have to go to those local officials. Those are the ones that you can literally knock on their door. Like, I have local officials that live on my block that I know that if I ring their bell, they're going to have a conversation with me. You can't do that with Trump. I mean, he ran into a bunker. Like, so, you know, those are things we have to keep in mind. And so I hope I'm not rambling or going.
That's okay. I want you as you. We know that you're an AKA, and I do want to move on. I want to incorporate Patrice Perry, who's also a community activist, onto the call, and we have a very special treat to end us tonight. And so I don't want to belabor, but I do want you, Fatima, to talk a little bit about the AKAs. I know you're an AKA. A lot of people just see the pretty girls in the pink and green out there, but don't really understand the civil and the social justice work that y'all are involved in, the community work that y'all are involved in, and what y'all do. If you can give a little bit of information and speak to that, please, that would be great.
Okay, so in regards to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, I am one member, so I don't necessarily want to speak for the entire organization. I am I was initiated into the Lambda chapter. We are the first chapter that was chartered in New York State. And so, like, my chapter has been in New York City since 1922, and we've been doing the groundwork in activism in the Harlem community and beyond for like almost 100 years. And so it's funny to say, it's funny when people have this misconception about women in sororities, women who are a part of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, because they don't necessarily see that we do a lot of the work in the background. And so, like, my line sister Chelsea, she helped organize yesterday's march. People might not necessarily know she's a part of the organization, but she is. You know, Naila, she's our pro-fight. She helped organize the march. Naila has also worked with NAN in terms of the Eric Gardner. I remember that was the very first time I met her at the round table in the back. And so, like, there has Alpha Kappa Alpha women have always, and I'm not taking away from any other organizations, I'm not too sure about what they've done, but I know for my organization has always been on the front lines trying to combat this. And not just the front lines, behind the scenes too. We're teachers, we're educators, we are medics. You know, we're in so many different parts of where we should be to help. Activism goes beyond just protesting. And I think that that's what's most important for people to know. Is like, yes, you can go out to the street and march, and I like to do that because for me, I get to exert that energy peacefully. But where I really am an activist is in my classroom, when I'm teaching my students like real U.S. history. My sorority sisters who are like in medicine, they're activists when they're, you know, doing things specific to Black and brown women in spaces, and Black and brown men in spaces and things of that sort. I have sorority sisters who are in HR who advocate for, you know, Black and brown people in the workplace. Like, these are background scenes, but this is still activism, and people don't necessarily view that as activism, but we're there. We're sitting at the tables. We're at these board meetings. Like, look up some of these names. Like, a lot of the people are a part of Black Greek letter organizations. So I think that my organization and all Black Greek organizations, and even not like organizations that are not, you know, Black Greek letter organizations, are definitely doing the work that is important. And we are there. You might not see the pink and green at the protest, but we are definitely there.
And we want to thank you, Fatima, and thank you for the AKAs for all of your service, all of the work that you've been doing. Thank you. You're an educator. Thank you for your service to our youth, and for being an advocate, not only, you know, on the front lines, but also in the institutions where we mold and we, you know, structure the futures for our young people. So thank you so much. And thank you for joining us tonight. If there's any information you want to leave in the chat, please, so we can continue to support you in your efforts. I do want to bring on, we call her the voice. She is a strong community advocate for Justice and Equality. She's also, of course, the House of Justice Manager of National Action Network. And as we are closing tonight, we want to talk about a little bit about our efforts that National Action Network has done to really bridge the situation of George Floyd in with one that we know so well. That's the case of Eric Garner that happened right in New York City, where this man also was screaming, "I can't breathe," as police were choking him, and he took his life. So we want to bring Patrice on, Sister Perry on right now to just talk about, as you've been on the front lines, you also went and was involved with National Action Network and our demonstration on Saturday as we went to Staten Island to the site where Eric Garner was killed in memory of George Floyd, whom we know, of course, was killed in Minnesota by police, screaming the same words, "I can't breathe." Patrice, can you talk a little bit about your experience there, and also if you've also been personally impacted by COVID-19, and you can talk a little bit about that as well, as it's impacted your family personally. Can you just talk to the temperament and how you have been involved as a community activist? Good evening.
So good evening all, and thank you for having me, guys. So when you look at the George Floyd case right now, it just reminds me of 5 years ago when we were out there with Eric Garner, and you couldn't even see the street signs. There was just so many people out there. And this Saturday, when we went back to where he was actually killed in Staten Island, it just brought back so many memories of here we go again, And why is it that we have to do this again? Like, it was just so sad to me. But then I realized I heard like that voice of hope. Like, if my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray. And, I know it hasn't been easy for the Garner family. It's not going to be easy for the Floyd family. But National Action Network has always been there for them. We will continue to be there. We will continue to cry out, no justice, no peace. And I want to let you know that people are out there screaming those words, as Attorney Hardy said earlier, but they have no kind of peacefulness in themselves. So why are you out there screaming it? And, when we went on Staten Island on Saturday, everyone was in that same thing as to what can we do? And like Emerald said in one of her interviews, it's really nothing you can do, but try to make sure laws are in place, make sure people are voting, make sure people are not just running in stores, grabbing Gucci bags, going home with a Gucci bag, and you don't have a voter's registration card in your purse. That's a problem for me. So we have to continue to stand there. We have to continue to stand there with the families. And yes, everyone needs to be heard. But why are we going in the stores, running in and taking bags and stuff from Foot Action and Foot Locker? What does that do for the George Floyd family? What does that do for the Emerald Garner family? What does it do for them? It doesn't. And I always said to myself, if our presence evokes your insecurity, that's not our burden to bear. For some reason, they're so insecure with Black people, for us having so much power. To choke a man live on camera and to have 3 other officers stand there and none of the human side of you come in. And then you realize the man's knee was on his neck, but if you look at his left hand, everyone, when you get a chance, go look at the left hand. And in martial arts, they say that's you applying pressure to the body. And can we sit down and say that that's okay? And y'all out here grabbing stuff out of stores for what? What can a pair of Jordans do? That can't bring back George Floyd.
That's right.
That can't bring back Eric Garner. What's wrong with y'all? Back in the day when they organized, they didn't have Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter and all of that. They had each other. And they said, no, we're going to go in the streets. Y'all saying burn stuff down. They said shut stuff down. You burning stuff down, you need to shut it down. Go in the street and sit in the street. Shut down intersections. Don't burn them down. Why would you do that?
I know that you mentioned what does all of this do? What does the looting and the rioting and vandalizing our communities do for the families? And you work closely, of course, with the family of Eric Garner through that situation. And we are blessed tonight to have the daughter of Erica Garner, the daughter of Eric Garner, the granddaughter, Alyssa, of Eric Garner, the daughter of Eric Garner, whom we also recently lost very tragically. And Patrice, if you can talk to that as we celebrated Erica's birthday, her 30th birthday this past Friday. Can you talk a little bit about, how we connect Erica Garner's memory to the memory of George Floyd? And then if you can also bring on our special guest this evening to close us out, Alyssa, with her very special words.
Sure. Thank you, Dominique. Yes, so 5/29 would have been Erica Garner's 30th birthday. We lost her to a massive heart attack in 2017. And, when I was out there Saturday with the protest, it reminded me when we were out there with Erica. That time she was going to take over the bridge, and she had to talk to Rev to get her off the bridge, right? So Alyssa is on this line, and Emerald has been doing an amazing job raising her kids, her little baby boy, and Alyssa. Alyssa is 10 years old. And Alyssa wanted to remember the memory of her mom, who she saw fight and had a heart attack. And that's what Reverend Sharpton said, she died because her heart was burning, that she didn't get justice for her father. And we are so honored tonight to have Alyssa on this live tonight. She has something special that she wanted to share in honor and tribute of her mom. So I'm going to ask Alyssa and Kaylee. Kaylee is Emerald's daughter. They're both on the live right now. If you guys can unmute.
Ladies, how are you? And thank you for joining us. Can you please share with us your special words?
Okay. So my poem that I made for my mom, I have right here. Hello, my name is Alyssa Snipes. I am 10 years old, daughter of the late Erica Gardner. My favorite memory of my mom is when after every test I got a good score on, I would go to the movies or Dave and Buster's to play. This is my favorite memory because we would spend lots of time together. This is also my favorite memory because every time I think of it, I always think of my mom and how we always spend time together. We used to go to my mom's friend's house in Queens. It was fun there too. My other favorite memory of my mom is we used to always go to the park and I would play and she was with great grandma and we would have cookouts and she would let me go to the pool with my friends. And my mom knew my best friend's mom, so every summer we would go to the pool. We would go to the pool together. We would just have lots of fun together and the park would be right next to the house. I want people to know that my mom was sweet and kind. She is also like that because she wants justice and that's what a lot of families need. She did, and I was interested in what she did for justice. I was interested because it was about letting your voice be heard and fighting for justice.
That was beautiful, Alyssa.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Alyssa.
So we will do whatever we can to not only lift up the legacy of your grandfather and of your mother, but to support you in your work. And as you continue to grow and flourish, we are so proud of you. I see little Kaylee. Kaylee, hey Kaylee. Kaylee is the daughter of Emerald Garner. And we just want to lift you young ladies up. We love you. We honor you. We support you. And if ever you all need us or need the voice of the people, we are always here for you, and we expect great things from you, young ladies. So keep up the great work. We love you. Thank you for joining us. Patrice, if you have any last words, I do want to also thank everybody for joining us tonight. All of our speakers that came on, our leaders that came on. Understand that you are important. You have an important voice, and you must do your part and lift that voice to be engaged, to be activated, to be involved in the change that we want to see. So thank you all for joining us. Patrice, if you have any last words you'd like to close us out, but we want to thank you all for joining us and remind you that Huddle is here every single Monday evening, 7:00 p.m. on Facebook Live. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining us on Zoom. Patrice, if you have any closing remarks as you take us out.
I do too. Ashley.
Okay, so I just want to say this really quickly. So many asked the question, how you break the chains? By empowering your people. And remember that racism is America's original sin. Stay focused, stay up, keep protesting, but peacefully. And continue to pray for these families because when the camera goes off, God still needs to cover them and be with them. Thank you all.
That's a fact. And I wanted to end with Patrice and Alyssa, because at the end of the day, it's a lot of us outside on the grounds who are able to be out there advocating and speaking up for those who can't. Young people like Kaylee and Alyssa are maybe too young to be out there on their own, but we have to advocate for them. And when you're looting stores and beating people up, make sure you remember that you're not just out there for yourself. You're out there for young people who can't advocate for themselves. You're out there for family members of victims who are no longer here. Also, Patrice didn't get to really go into it tonight, but her mother is in a nursing home. Those in the nursing home and those in prisons and the homeless they were impacted by COVID like no other. And they don't have an opportunity to speak for themselves. They don't have nobody advocating for them. So I wanted to have her speak tonight, and also the senator, because he's working around this issue. But there are people that are forgotten about in this pandemic. And just because you go outside and go enjoy yourself and go drive and go do whatever, doesn't mean that other people are not hurting. Other people are not critically harmed from this time period, from these last 2 to 3 months. So make sure you remember them. This is not about a Gucci bag. This is not about just your anger, because this is not new. There was people who talked about, oh, this is a new time. I can bring in people from Ferguson who can talk about how it was on the ground there. They were looting. There was a whole bunch of people on the ground, and half of those activists are in jail or dead, unfortunately. So it's not a game out here. It's not a joke out here, and I don't want to send people out blind, leading the blind, or a sheep out to slaughter. We are outnumbered, so if you do not have a real strategy as far as to defend your people, do not send people out there to be reckless and to disrupt a city that is ready already shows you that they do not value our lives. This is not a game. This is not a game. This is not for social media. This is real life. And they keep saying the revolution will be televised. The revolution been televised. They've been showing the revolution for years. Woo! So it's to the point that it's our turn to be a part of the revolution. So what part of history will you stand upon? Remember what you're doing, and remember the shoulders that you're on. And I will also echo what Chelsea said earlier. We have to unite. It's a whole bunch of groups out here that are working and doing the work on the ground, big and small. So it's time for us all to come together, because they don't care about what group you're representing. They're killing us. So it's time to come together and stand together as one. That's all I have to say. I love y'all. God bless y'all. Remember the victims of who we out here fighting for. Remember those who are impacted by COVID, and keep them in your prayers, hearts, and actions. Thank every single person that joined us today. God bless you. And I'm going to unmute everyone so you can say something.
Say hello, say good evening. Good to see you.
Hello.
Hello to all of our Facebook Live watchers. Thank you for tuning in. Again, we will be back right here on Zoom, on Facebook Live, National Action Network Youth Huddle, next Monday at 7:00 p.m. Tell somebody, send a young person on our way, and let's get this going. Let's you say, get it popping. Let's get it popping for change. Let's get it popping for justice. And let's get it popping.
Well done, Dominique.
Thank y'all. Hi, Rashida.
Hi, this
Hey,
is
Rashida. What's baby girl?
Okay, Mom.
Kayla, come.
Kayla. How damn she is. Hi, Kayla. Hi, your twin.
Hi, Kaylee. That's Kayla.
Hey, Tayron.
Hey.
Hey, Kayla. Hi.
Hi, Kayla.
Guys.
Moses. Sister.
Make sure
Reverend, how's it going?
for all that's coming next.
What's the word? What's the word?
The word.
The word. Keisha McLaughlin.